will be forgotten if one stresses the worship of the deities at home. Paragraph. Rupa Goswami further writes, "My dear foolish friend, I think that you have already heard some of the auspicious Srimad Bhagavatam, which decries seeking the results of fruitive activities, economic development, and liberation. I think that now it is certain that gradually the verses of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, describing the pastimes of the Lord, will enter your ears and go into your heart." Now this goes into hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And just that little section was about deity worship. And then it goes into Mahamantra and living in the sacred place. So I thought of narrating 4 stories about deities. The first of those 4 stories is the very first Gaur-Nitai deities that were worshipped. The first Gaur-Nitai deities that were worshipped were a gift from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his dear devotee Gauridas Pandit. Now, many of us that are accustomed to hearing Gaur Lila, we don't hear so much about Gauridas Pandit, but he was one of the dearest devotees of Lord Chaitanya. So the history goes like this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was contemplating, or Nimai Pandit was contemplating, even my students are offensive. And it's difficult. You have to unlock the door. You have to unlock the door, otherwise you won't get out the door. The little girl with the ball in her hand wanted to go out the door. Okay, Hare Krishna, trying to help. She went through the garage. They came to see him because he was their teacher, and they found him in a mood of ecstatic love for Krishna, in the mood of the gopis. And they didn't understand his mood of love at all. And they started criticizing him right to his face. And as that ecstasy of love of God subsided, he began to consider something needs to be done to rescue these offensive people. And one of the things that I could do to rescue these offensive people is they take me as an ordinary person, okay. However, they're trained in Vedic culture, so if I accept sannyas, then at least they'll offer respect because I'm a sannyasi. Therefore, I should take sannyas. It's for the benefit of his students and others who don't understand transcendence, but at least they have some respect for social custom and culture. So he decided to take sannyas. I mean, it's a lila. It's part of a bigger picture of his lila. And before he was going to, so he decided, and according to the biographies of his life, he decided to inform 5 or 6 personalities that he was planning to take sannyas. So the first person was Lord Nityananda. And there's this nice exchange where Lord Nityananda didn't want to say no and he didn't want to say yes. And some back and forth, and he then accepted. Nimai is going to take sannyas. I'm going to go with him. Now, at that time, he was not married. He was an avaduta type of personality, not married. So after describing to Lord Nityananda, the next person, Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit was 1 year younger and was a classmate in the same school and had transcendental affection for Nimai. So he was shocked. There's different responses. But he was gentle. He just cried. And cried and cried. And just, he knew he couldn't stop him. So he was just silent and cried. That was 2. Then the third person he informed, third person was Gaur-Nitai Pandit. Now Gaur-Nitai Pandit lived along the bank of the Ganga in a place known as Ambika Kalna. Someday, some of you may visit Navadvip, and when you visit Navadvip and you do a parikram, it's for sure you'll go to Ambika Kalna, because they're in Ambika Kalna the very first Gaur-Nitai deities. Now, Gaur-Nitai is an enigmatic personality. He's very hard to understand. He had a very affectionate and kind of like a senior in age relationship with Mahaprabhu. So when Nimai Pandit informed him that he was planning to take sannyas, he told him, no, you can't do that. Put his foot down. He said, we won't be able to exist in separation from you. You can't do this. Because sannyas means you won't stay here. And, I'm a householder. My home, my family, my everything is here. Then I won't get your association, so you can't do this. It's affection. Just in a different mood of affection than both Lord Nityananda and Gadadhar. So Lord Chaitanya was with Lord Nityananda, and he informed Gaur-Nitai, I'll tell you what, I'll manifest a deity form of myself and Lord Nityananda, and when you see this deity form of myself and Lord Nityananda, you will see myself and Lord Nityananda. So he manifested. Now it doesn't say like voila, like just out of air he manifested, or he had them carved. They're neem deities, very tall. And worship them and you'll see me and Lord Nityananda. And off they went. Now the place where Gaur-Nitai lived, and still, the deities are, there's a mandap, there's an area in front of the deity room. And so they just were walking past the mandap on the way to the gate. And Gaur-Nitai stopped them, said, stop. If the deity and you are non-different, then you stay and let the deity go. And Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit said, very well. So they went to the altar and moved to where the deities were. The deities got off the altar and started heading for the gate. And Gaur-Nitai was amazed and said, wait, this isn't right. The deities can stay and you can go. And we went back and forth several times. And then there was a clear realization that the deity form and the Lord himself are non-different. So he was a Brahmin, and he worshipped the deities with his heart and soul in all the proper regulations. And over a period of time, he accepted as a disciple one devotee who he named Chaitanya Das. Nice name for a disciple of Gaur-Nitai Pandit. And he trained Chaitanya Das in the worship of the deities. Gaur-Nitai, he just called them Gaur-Nitai. And ISKCON devotees like some name other than Gaur-Nitai, but he called them Gaur-Nitai. Gaur-Nitai. And he worshipped them very nicely and trained Chaitanya Das very nicely, and after some time, he had to go out of town for some business. He told Chaitanya Das, you worship the deity just as you've been trained, and after some days I'll come back. So that's what happened. And in just a spontaneous, ecstatic mood, Chaitanya Das thought it would be very nice to have a festival in honor of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on the occasion of his birthday. So he planned, in the absence of his guru, a Gaura Purnima festival. And after some days, his guru came back and heard all about the festival that Chaitanya Das was planning, and in fact had invited everybody without any consultation with him. He was upset. How can you do this? No discussion. But everyone's been invited, so it has to go on. So there was a Gaur Purnima festival. And it wasn't held in his house. It was held in a public square. In Ambika Kalna, there's a very large public square with a very large tree underneath, lots of shade. And so the devotees came and started having kirtan for the Gaur Purnima festival. And the kirtan was very lively kirtan. So lively that the deities of Gaur-Nitai on the altar, they wanted to join the kirtan. So they got off the altar and started heading for the gate to go to the downtown in the square. And Gauridas shouted at them, "Stop! It's time for Rajbhog offering. You can go after the offering." He had that kind of relationship with his deities. And they wanted to join the kirtan. They didn't want to wait for Rajbhog offering. And so they went out the gate. And Gauridas, older man, chasing behind them with a stick in his hand. Come back, come back. Running. They're looking over their shoulder and running. And he was in this, chastising mood. So in order to conceal themselves from Gauridas Pandit's stick, it is said that Chaitanya Das, who was Gauridas Pandit's disciple, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered into his heart and concealed himself so he could join the kirtan from a concealed way. And when the kirtan was over, he went back and stood on the altar as a deity form. So from that day forward, Chaitanya Das had another name. And his other name was Hriday Chaitanya Das. Now, Hriday Chaitanya Das has a very important role to play in other aspects of the disciplic succession following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, etc., but I won't go there because this is just about deity worship. But so even today, some of you may have been to Vrindavan, and when you go to Vrindavan, one of the places many people like to go is Banki Bihari. And when you go to the Banki Bihari temple, they keep the curtain closed, except at every intervals they open the curtain, make sounds, and then wave the curtain, and then close the curtain. And then you have to wait and open the curtain, close the curtain. So they do the same thing at Ambika Kalna. And for a similar reason, they're afraid. The history is they don't want him to leave the altar, so they don't let him see the audience take darshan too long. They close the curtain. So to get photographs, it's not easy. You have to pay a few rupees and have to have their permission. But I have some nice photographs if you can see the screen. Here's the same Gaur-Nitai deities on another day. Now you notice in the front, by their feet, there's Radha Krishna deities. But notice the position of their hands. There's certain meanings to these mudras of their hands, and I don't know the meanings. Maybe somebody in the room does, I don't know. Maybe I should find out what the meaning is. So this is Gauridas Pandit's deities at Ambika Kalna, Gaur-Nitai. They're very tall, and they reciprocate with the worshippers, very celebrated deities. Then another person who Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda revealed that they were planning to, that he, Mahaprabhu, was planning to take sannyas, was Vaninath, Dvija Vaninath. He was a brahmachari. And he was a brother, younger brother, of Gadadhar Pandit, Dvija Vaninath. Not so often spoken about, but a very important person, one of the handful of persons who Mahaprabhu informed that he was planning to take sannyas. So I visited him at Champahata, or sometimes referred to as Champahati. And same thing. I'm going to take sannyas. I came to inform you. Please keep this confidential. Soon I'm going to leave Navadvip and accept the renounced order. And he very similar to his brother. He's very soft, and he wasn't like, wasn't like Gauridas, where you could talk back to him. It wasn't that kind of a mood. He was just very soft and was very sad. How is this? How we maintain myself and all the devotees in Navadvip? You're our life and soul, and you're going to leave. Just take our life. That would make it simple. It's spoken in different ways. So again, this is the second deity of Mahaprabhu that was personally arranged by. Lord Ramachandra did something similar, right? There was one Brahmin that was fasting whenever he was away. Mahaprabhu fashioned a deity. Ramchandra fashioned a deity for that devotee who worshipped that deity. You familiar with that pastime? You don't know that pastime? When Ramchandra was residing in Ayodhya, there was a Brahmin, after he returned and became the king, there was a Brahmin who, whenever Ramchandra had to leave Ayodhya, he would fast. Before he would take his breakfast, he would come pay his obeisances before Ramchandra, and then he would break his fast, have his morning meal. And if he was out of town, he would fast until he came back. And Ramchandra came to know this was the case. And so he arranged a deity of himself for this devotee who worshipped the deity whether Ramchandra was in town or not. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arranged deities of Mahaprabhu, only a deity of Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar, because they're brothers. So these deities are Gaur-Gadadhar. So, which side in the Panchatattva, Sri Krishna Chaitanya going to the right, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, and Gadadhar is to Mahaprabhu's left. So, Gadadhar is to Mahaprabhu's left. Mahaprabhu is on our left, and to his left, or our right, is Gadadhar. So these are deities of Gaur-Gadadhar in Champahata. Now here's a little history, in case you go to Mayapur and want to see the deities of Dvija Vaninath. being worshipped very nicely even today at Champahata or Champahati. So here's from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In Champahata village is a champaka forest. It's a tree that grows champak flowers. A champak forest from which Gopi Champakalata gathers flowers to make garlands for Radha and Krishna. This place is not different from Kandiravan in Braja, where Krishna and Balaram would take rest. The great poet Jayadev Goswami wrote Gita Govinda while residing in Champahata. Did you know that? Jayadev Goswami, Gita Govinda? Yes. Some are yes, and some are like, huh? How do we know Jayadev Goswami? Well, in ISKCON, we know Jayadev Goswami through our Nrsimha prayers. Nrsimha, the prayer that we sing for Nrsimha Arti, or Nrsimha Puja, is part of a Das Avatar Stotra, the 10 essential lila avatars of Krishna, and that Das Avatar Stotra is part of Gita Govinda. Gita Govinda is a massive, very beautifully written Sanskrit literature describing, well, Gita Govinda. Messages or songs about Gita, about Govinda. And the author was Jayadev Goswami, this very celebrated person who is most known for his being in Jagannath Puri, but he spent substantial time in Navadvip. This is, some generations before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. And the place where he resided was Champahata. And there's some history behind how that happened, which I won't go into. But the king at that time requested him, because he heard these songs of Gita Govinda, and he just wanted to come and offer his respect to him as an elevated saint who was residing in his kingdom. And Jayadev wanted to have nothing to do with kings. He said, I'm leaving. He said, no. I promise I won't bother you. Stay over at this place. It's very quiet and very secluded, and it'll just be my honor that you're residing. So he resided at Champahata for some years, and this is the main place where he wrote Gita Govinda. Same place where some time later Dvijavaninath resided. It's a place in the southwest part of Ritudvip that doesn't mean much to many of you. Navadvip means 9 islands. One of those 9 islands is Ritudvip, and Champahata is in the southwest part of Ritudvip. So sometime you'll see a map of Navadvip, and it's one of the islands, and that's where Champahata is, the southwest part of Ritudvip. And it's also known as Champahati, more commonly Champahati. It was formerly known as Champahata because there was a market, or hata, there that sold the flowers of the champak trees that grow profusely in the area. Just like we're very familiar in ISKCON with Namahata. And this is Champahata. And hata just means marketplace. So the marketplace of the holy name. You familiar? Some are you familiar. Some are looking like, whoa, this is all new. During the time of Lord Nityananda and Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas. His mother had requested him, don't go to Vrindavan, go to Puri instead. Krishna is there in Puri. And if you stay in Puri, 2 things. Devotees will go back and forth for Rath Yatra from Bengal, and I'll get word of you at least annually because when they go to attend Rath Yatra, they'll meet with you and come to hear of your activities. And second is maybe from time to time you'll come back to Navadvip to take sacred bath in the Ganges, and then I can see you again. So please make your place of residence in Puri. It's part of a lila. There's many more things to say about why that was done. So he stayed in Puri. And then the devotees would come to see him every year for Rath Yatra, and then stay for the rest of the 4 months of the rainy season, and then go back for another 8 months, and come again each year. So one year Lord Chaitanya, arranged a private discussion with Lord Nityananda. In the private discussion with Lord Nityananda said, my mother has asked me to stay here, so I can't fulfill my purpose of spreading the holy name all throughout the land. So I'm requesting you to do that on my behalf. I know you want to come and be with me. I want you to go and spread the holy name throughout the land. So he couldn't say no. He didn't want to say yes. So he agreed. And with him were given a number of associates. Very, very amazing pastimes with these associates. Long stories about what the associates of Lord Nityananda did. But they established Namahata. It means a marketplace of the holy name. So they would go. Lord Chaitanya said to Lord Nityananda, there's a song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I don't know what the Bengali word is, but there's a Bengali word that's comparable to the English word of franchise. You have a business and you allow somebody to use the name of your business and you give them a license, a franchise. So he said you can set up Namahatas and it's as a franchise of my work, but you have to charge a fair price for the holy name. And the fair price is faith. They're having a great time back there. The fair price is faith. That's all. It doesn't know how much, just some faith. And then you can set up a marketplace throughout all of Bengal. Knowing that Lord Chaitanya had given that service to Lord Nityananda, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he took up his residence in Navadvip, selected a place not far from the headquarters where Nityananda had set up a headquarters of a place that has franchises, Coca-Cola or whatever. And Bhaktivinoda, replicated, in the same language what Nityananda had done in a very structured way. It's one of the gifts of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And what we have done in ISKCON is we took the model of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and just gave it a different name. We call it Bhakti Vriksha. Same model, different names. Same model, different names. So all that is about Champahati. Is given the name because in the marketplace of this place, Champahati, it became also known as Champahata because in the marketplace there were lots of champak flowers, which are very nice, very fragrant, very colorful. Here's some history, well-known history about Dvijavaninath. In Satya Yuga, the same Dvijavaninath was a Brahmana. Now this is from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings in Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. He lived in Champahati and he worshipped Radha Krishna with champak flowers. And Krishna was so pleased with him that he revealed his form in Satya Yuga his form of Lord Gauranga and said, I will appear in Kali Yuga. You will be one of my dear associates. See you then. And he disappeared. So Dvijavaninath in his former life during Satya Yuga was a worshipper of Radha and Krishna. And there's a book, maybe you know about this book. There's a book that was written by Kavi Karnapur. And for some of you that are newer, these are too many names, but don't worry about the names. He's a Vaishnava and Kavi, very learned. And in one of his books, he wrote many books, very, very skilled in writing and very deep and profound. He explains that in every one of the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have their spiritual counterpart in Krishna Lila. For example, in Krishna Lila, who was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Krishna himself. Right? Krishna himself. At least that's our Gaudiya understanding. He's Krishna himself, who appeared in the mood of his own devotee to teach the chanting of the holy name. Lord Nityananda. Who is Lord Nityananda in Krishna's Leela? Balaram. Nityananda Ram. And so forth and so on. Each one, I'll say it again one more time, each one of the personalities in Gaur Leela, they have their spiritual counterpart in Krishna Leela. Here's something that Bhaktisiddhanta, Prabhupada's spiritual master, wrote. It's very interesting. In the spiritual sky, there's unlimited spiritual planets called Vaikuntha planets. And how many? They're infinite, practically speaking. Too many to count. Unlimited numbers. And there's a presiding deity of Narayana in each one of those spiritual planets. And amongst all of those spiritual planets, there's one at the topmost region of Vaikuntha is Ayodhya. Ayodhya is in Haridham, or the Vaikuntha realm, but there's greater intimacy in Ayodhya Dham than in Vaikuntha Dham. That is to say, Lord Narayan doesn't have a mother and father. But in Ayodhya, Ramchandra has a mother and father eternally. And he has 3 brothers. Who are Narayan's brothers? He doesn't have brothers. He has expansions, but he doesn't have brothers. So there's an intimacy, etc. in Ayodhya, but it's still in Haridham. And above Haridham is Golokadham. Now this is weaving in Brahma Samhita. Some of you like Sanskrit verses. Here's one. It's from Brahma Samhita. Golokanamni nijadamni tale chatasya devi maheshu haridama suteshu teshu. So this is describing the regions of creation from Devi Dham. Above Devi Dham is Mahesh Dham. Above Mahesh Dham is Haridham. And above Haridham is Golokanamni nijadamni tale chatasya. So Goloka, the spiritual planet of Goloka, is above. And above doesn't mean necessarily geographically or 3-dimensionally. It means spiritually. Spiritually because of rasa. And the intimacy of love in Goloka surpasses that of Vaikuntha. I'll say it again. The intimacy of love, the rasa that's experienced in Goloka, is not found in Vaikuntha. There's no cowherd. The intimacy of love is not the same in those two realms. They're spiritual, they're perfect, And then there's perfect, more perfect, most perfect. And the most perfect is in Goloka because it's in the measure. It's not a measure of purity. It's a measure of rasa. This is a teaching that is in Brahma Samhita and is expanded upon by our acharyas in different ways. So in that spiritual realm, Goloka, there are 4 divisions or quadrants. You ready? There's Vrindavan in its most intimate. Just like Krishna's pastimes, he leaves Vrindavan, he goes where? Mathura. And when he goes to Mathura, from Mathura he goes to Dwaraka. So that's 3, but there's 4. So what's the 4th one? The 4th one is identified directly in Brahma Samhita as Svetadweep. What's Svetadweep? Svetadweep means white island. Sveta Dweep. So Svetadweep can refer to, often refers to, the island in the middle of the milk ocean in Dhruvaloka. When the demigods have a problem and they need Lord Vishnu to help, where do they go? They go to the shore of the milk ocean. And they say the Purusha Sukta prayers glorifying Purusha, Mahapurusha, in different language. And when they speak and chant, invoke the Supreme Lord, Mahapurusha, he replies, saying, like, for example, to the demigods when they went to the shore of the milk ocean, when Dhruva was causing a havoc in the universe. They couldn't breathe, all of that. So he, the Supreme Lord, is residing in an island in the middle of the milk ocean. And that island is Svetadweep. So the Svetadweep name can mean the place where Lord Vishnu resides in the midst of the milk ocean. Svetadweep, in principle, also means white island, and according to Brahma Samhita and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's explanation, the Svetadweep portion of Goloka is where Mahaprabhu lives, eternally. So look closely. Do we have a first canto Bhagavatam? Just hand me the first canto Bhagavatam. This is an artist's depiction of what you just said. Over here, that's the Vaikuntha planets. Many, many, many. With names of Vishnu presiding over each, or Narayan presiding over each. On this side, there's Goloka. Look closely, and you'll see over to the left side, there's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What's he doing in Goloka? Because it's his eternal abode. It's the Svetadweep quadrant of Goloka. So do you see the connection? There's Radha and Krishna over here, right in the center, and they're in Vrindavan. And they're enjoying pastimes together along with Gopas and so forth. Nanda and Jasoda, they're eternal residents there also. And then in this center part, that's where Vrindavan is, but over to one side is Mathura, over to another side is Dwaraka, in the spiritual realm. And there's Mahaprabhu. So Radha and Krishna and Mahaprabhu in Goloka. So the connection is everyone that's in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lila has their spiritual counterpart in Krishna lila, or say it the other way. Everyone in Krishna lila has their counterpart in Gaur lila. It's fascinating. And so there's a book, going back now, written by Kavi Karnapur, It's a who's who. In Gaur Lila, here's the name, and there in Krishna Lila, here's their name. During, not so long ago, this is the Purnima. Not so long ago, we observed the Ashtami, Radhastami. And on Radhastami, or in honor of Radhastami, one of the things that we discussed is the different ways in which Srimati Radharani makes her appearance in this world, because it's the appearance day, celebrating the appearance day of Radharani in this realm. She's existing eternally in Goloka, and in each day of Brahma, Krishna appears, and shortly after Krishna appears, Radharani appears, because they're not separate. They can't be separate. There's no such thing as they're separate. So Krishna appears, and some days later, a fortnight later, because Krishna appears on the Ashtami of the waning moon, and Radha appears on the Ashtami of the waxing moon. Just a fortnight. So during each day of Brahma, there's a slightly different way, some variation in the way that Radharani makes her appearance. We discussed some of them on Radharani's appearance day. It was only a short while ago. And one of those descriptions, I won't go into detail because it's very, very detailed, but the essence is, same message. Radharani has her counterpart. Radharani has her counterpart in Dwarka. And each of the gopis have their counterpart in Dwarka. It's a truth that's mystical, but it's not too surprising, because Krishna can expand, and Krishna expands. Krishna has his expansions. Radharani can expand. She has her expansions. And those expansions can expand. So they have their counterparts. So here's from Kavi Karnapur, all that was kind of Krishna Consciousness 301. Now we'll come, because it's to introduce, according to this book by Kavi Karnapur, Dvijavaninath has his identity in Krishna Lila, and it's a manjari. The manjari's name is Kamaleka. Kamaleka manjari. So these deities of Gaur-Gadadhar were worshipped during the lifetime of Dvijavaninath. Dvijavaninath turned the worship over to the next generation and over many, many, many generations, because Mahaprabhu's appearance was something like 540 years ago. So over the period of the years, the worship of the deity was forgotten. In fact, even where the deities were was forgotten. One Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta, was given the assignment by his father to reestablish the forgotten places of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. And one of those places of pastimes was these deities of Gaur-Gadadhar in Champahati. So he knew that they existed, and he was able to find them. And where did he find them? He found them in an abandoned shed. And when he found them in the abandoned shed, by spiritual acumen, he immediately understood, this is Gaur-Gadadhar. So he entrusted the worship of Gaur-Gadadhar to a young brahmachari disciple named Paramananda, who was a brahmachari. 8 years old, he gave him Brahminical initiation at 8 years old in 1921. and told them, for the rest of your life, worship this deity. And he did. I met Paramananda Brahmachari when he was very old. Very old. He's no longer with us, but he was deeply immersed in Gaur Lila and deeply immersed in his deities of Gaur-Gadadhar. Now today there's somebody else, because he's now passed away, who is worshipping the deities of Gaur-Gadadhar, and there they are. I beg your pardon? You know him? Huh?
I met him.
You met him. Okay. He's a little different. But Paramananda was a saint. Simple man, but a saint, and was recognized like that. So here's the deities in a modern photo. Notice the position of their hands, a little different. Here's another day where the deities are dressed very nicely. Now notice there's a Shila in between them, and now it's a Govardhan Shila in between them. This is a more up-to-date photograph of these deities. Nicely cared for, nicely dressed, Gaur-Gadadhar deities that were originally given by, established by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, given to Dvijavaninath. Now, two more, and we're done telling stories. This is a photograph of Radharaman. Many of you know who is Radharaman. Radharaman is the deity, the self-manifesting deity of Krishna that manifested from a Shalagram Shila because of the desire of Gopal Bhatta to worship a form other than just Shila form. And the next day, the Shila manifested this form. The pujaris I haven't seen, but I was told the pujaris, for some persons, they showed the backside of the deity as the other half of the shalagram that's round, and the front side is the deity, and very exquisite detail. Now, Gopal Bhatta, his principal devotion before Radharaman was Mahaprabhu. So after years and years of worshipping Radharaman, he felt some transcendental anxiety. I'm worshipping Radharaman, but I'm not worshipping Gauranga. So sometimes his deity would manifest the form of Gauranga. And he was very happy. And there's another very nice description of a deity that would manifest the form of Gauranga from a form of Krishna. This is the deity of Gaur-Govinda. In the little history, and we're done. The little history is Rupa Goswami was given the assignment by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to do two main things: write books and reestablish the lost places of Krishna's pastimes. So when doing that, he found deities that were long ago, shortly after Krishna's life, was his great-grandson, Vajranabh, who established deities, and one of those deities he couldn't find, Govindaji. Long story. Krishna brought Rupa Goswami to the place where Govindaji was, and the deity was buried in the earth. You've heard this story? No. You know who is Rupa Goswami? Okay. You know who is Lord Chaitanya? Okay. You know who is Krishna? So Krishna manifested in this age as Krishna himself in the mood and complexion of his own devotee. The complexion of Radha, golden. And the mood of Radha, Krishna himself teaching love for Krishna, in the mood of a devotee of Krishna. That's our understanding of who is Mahaprabhu. Krishna himself. In the mood and the complexion, Radha Juti Suvalitam, Krishna Naumi Sarupam. So, Krishna Naumi Sarupam, in the same identity as Krishna, but in the complexion and the bhava of Radha. That's Mahaprabhu. Krishna himself in the mood and the complexion of Radha. And Lord Chaitanya had many, many followers. Principal amongst them were 6. Very elevated persons who he assigned to go to Vrindavan and do these 2 things. Write books, because he gave them teachings, and he wanted them to expand those teachings and empowered them to expand those teachings. And just like this Nectar Devotion is written by Rupa Goswami, that was one of the teachings. Explain bhakti in your books. So he did. And find the places, they're forgotten. The places of Krishna's pastimes, thousands of years ago, now forgotten and lost. Restore them for the world to see and understand. So he did that. So one of the Rupa Goswami services was finding the deities after Krishna left this world. There was a king. The king was Maharaj Parikshit. First it was Yudhisthira, and then it was Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit. So Maharaj Parikshit had the great-grandson of Krishna placed as the king of Mathura. And one of the first things that Krishna's great-grandson did is he established deities in the principal places of Krishna's pastimes. One of those deities was Govindaji. Without all the details, Rupa Goswami found Govindaji. It's a very nice story. He had done so many services, but he was in transcendental anxiety, and he was unable to fulfill this instruction. So he was sitting by the side of the river Jamuna, feeling very sad, transcendentally sad. And a small boy, cowherd boy, came and asked him, "Rupa, why are you looking so sad?" And he, just let it out of his heart. Said, "Oh, I know where Govindaji is. I'll just show you. Let's go." He took him by the hand. They walked some distance up to this mound, kind of little hillock, and said every evening at milking time, one cow comes and just releases a lot of milk. She's doing abhishek to Govindaji. He's underneath the ground, right here. See the wet spot? She just was here. In the morning, get some men to help you, and they'll find the deity for you. He's right here. I've got to go now. It's time for milking the cows. And off he went. Sure enough, Govindaji was there. So what did Rupa Goswami? He was a mendicant. He can't build a temple. So he put him on a little platform. And then Rupa Goswami sent a messenger to Lord Chaitanya to inform him, "At last, I found Govindaji." So the messenger delivered that message to Lord Chaitanya, who was in Puri at that time, Jagannath Puri. And he was very happy. He read the letter to Kashishwara Pandit. You see his name on the screen. And Kashishwara Pandit was really good at deity worship. "Can you go? I'd like you to go and help Rupa Goswami establish really nice deity worship for Govindaji." And Kashishwara Pandit was silent, because it meant leaving Lord Chaitanya's association in Puri and going to Vrindavan. Nothing wrong with going to Vrindavan, but he was very attached. Very attached. He was just silent. Mahaprabhu could understand his heart and said, I understand your feelings. I'm going to give you a deity of Govinda ji, and when you worship this form of Govinda ji, you'll see me. We'll call the deity Gaur-Govinda. So, with that, Kashishwara Pandit left Puri, he went to Vrindavan, and for the rest of his life he lived in Vrindavan. And to this very day, you see the deity form. The deity form of Gaur-Govinda is by the side of Radha Govinda in Jaipur. Jaipur, Radha Govinda. Because the deities were moved from Vrindavan to Jaipur for protection purposes. So there's another fourth example. Now this isn't exactly Lord Chaitanya establishing a deity of himself, but Lord Chaitanya establishing a deity of Govinda, where Kashishwara Pandit, at least when worshipping Gaur-Govinda, would see Lord Chaitanya in the deity. Now, we don't have that capacity, but Lord Chaitanya gave him that capacity. So all this is about worshipping deities. I had a fantastic time this morning putting all this together. These are wonderful descriptions, specifically Lord Chaitanya interacting lovingly with his devotees to allow his darshan through the medium of deity worship. And the idea is, there's many things to say about deity worship. There's a very nice verse in Canto 2, Chapter 2, about deity worship in Srimad Bhagavatam, and you can read some more about it. So all of the devotees, it's specifically recommended for householders. Now, our great sadhus who are renunciates, they also, many or most worship deities, not everyone. But so deity worship is for everyone, but especially it's beneficial for householders. And as you worship the deity, attachment to the deity starts to awaken. Gradually, like in any relationship, it takes some time for any relationship to you become attached in that relationship. But deity worship establishes a relationship with the deity, and there's reciprocation. And that was what we heard, this little short passage from Nectar Devotion about deity worship. Now, I think the deities are ready to appear again. It's now already 2 o'clock, 1:45. Gosh, we've been going for quite some time. What should we do? Where's our host and hostess? What would you like us to do? Should we bring the deity and have arti? Should we have questions? Or what would you like us to do? You know your guests. They're all your guests. So what do you want for them? 5-10 minutes. We have 5-10 minutes. And then the deities will come, we'll have arti. And then you know what comes after that. We have a portable microphone. All you have to do is stick your hand in the air and we'll bring you the microphone. Okay. Over here.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. I understand the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha planet, then the Ayodhya, and then Golok Vrindavan, and the differences in the mood, the bhav, or the intimacy. How about, so there is no